We are back on The Real News. The website's therealnewsradio.com, and you can email us on air at therealnewsradio.com. We are hopefully being joined with Mr. Bob Chapman, the international forecaster. He may not be with us quite as of yet, so let's continue, Brian, with just a little bit of some economic news. This was reported from Bloomberg this week. U.S. home prices may be lost for a generation. We might be looking at a lost generation for U.S. home values. Far too many analysts are calling a bottom to the housing market after home prices in 20 metropolitan areas declined at a lower pace in February, according to the Standard & Poor's Case-Shiller Index. Don't be blinded by the glint of optimism in headlines about rising consumer confidence and slowing prices declines. Demographic and market realities tell more of a sobering story. You won't see a widespread housing rebound in an economy in which 600,000 jobs a month are lost and foreclosures ravage the most over-leveraged areas. These are just the visible barriers to a recovery. Mortgage lending has also been an unusually tight-fisted process as of late. Lenders are demanding a 20% deposit for home purchases and want impeccable credit ratings. About 45% of U.S. banks surveyed by the Federal Reserve said they had tightened their lending standards on prime mortgages, and I suspect that number is much higher. Then there's the reality that the market is glutted with homes. A record 19 million homes stood empty at the end of 2008. What you can't see is the most recent housing numbers is the least visible driver of home prices today, demographics. Baby boomers. The baby boomer generation, the largest in American history, will be buying fewer single-family homes. The U.S. is experiencing a 40-year generational peak in consumer spending, one that will lead to the first and last depression of our lifetimes, author Harry Dent predicts in his book, The Great Depression Ahead. Although we may not be headed for the 1930s-style depression, there's plenty of evidence to suggest that boomers are dumping their 4- and 5-bedroom suburban homes for 2- and 3-bedroom condominiums. So again, this is reported by Bloomberg. U.S. house prices may be lost for a generation. Brian, you may have some information that's current to you here in this area of just how difficult housing is in this area right here, and they say that maybe the home bubble or the residential housing bubble hadn't actually burst so much in this area. What's your opinion on this?
Well, I can personally vouch for the information that you just outlined to us without going into too much detail.
We have seen this personally in this area. I mean, if you don't have impeccable credit and at least a 20% deposit, or in a case we know of, you can have that and still not be able to buy a house. So it is very disturbing because I saw this past week in the news, some TV stations were reporting that the worst was over. The light at the end of the tunnel is now in view on this recession, or what we call here the depression. But I run a small business here in this town. I, for one, have not seen a hint of it. It seems to continually be getting worse. All my friends, either on short time, in between jobs, working 2 jobs. I mean, just and what really burns me up is this whole thing could have been averted. It's all by design, and they're taking us where they want us to go, and we're trotting right along. It just amazes me. I mean, people, and this is something I want to ask Bob Chapman if we haven't got that yet. Okay, people willfully now accept the fact, and I'll ask you, that they no longer have lifelong careers. They no longer have stable jobs, and they no longer have retirements. All of that's been taken away, and we sit back and say, okay, we'll accept it. You know, they have ruined our economy. They've outsourced all the manufacturing jobs. It's all been sent to China. It's all been sent to Mexico. And this massive amount of money they've thrown at this problem has not done diddly squat, apparently, according to these reports. So where's it all headed, Brian?
I agree with you. It's not headed in a very good direction at all. And you're absolutely right. You see people, they're not mad at all. They're just, oh well. I mean, it's just the way it goes, I guess. I mean,
holding out hope. I'll give them credit for that. You know, always be the optimist. But when you've been fleeced to this extent and it's continuing, and it doesn't have to be this way, the whole thing could have been averted, and yet it's continuing, and everyone's accepted of it. I mean, if you ride around right now, it seems like there's more and more houses for sale, and then there's more and more stuff pushed up at the road for sale to boot. So,
well, to go into what you were saying here, I also had printed this article out I saw yesterday. House price drop leaves more underwater. Ruth Simon, James R. Haggerty. The downturn in home prices has left about 20% of U.S. homeowners owing more on the mortgage than their homes are actually worth, according to a new study, signaling additional challenges to the Obama administration's efforts to stabilize the housing market. More than 1 in 10 borrowers with a mortgage owe 110% or more of their home's value at the end of last year. So this is actually telling me a majority of the money being released may be going more to people like this that need to refinance before they wind up out in the street, rather than actually purchasers looking for a home that's for sale.
I think that's a very good point. And then on the Bloomberg report, they're saying that people are trying now to sell their 4 and 5 bedroom houses. They can't afford the mortgages.
Right.
They've been
downsize.
Downsize. They've been told the house is not worth what they owe on it. That has to be like a slap in the face. They're trying to downsize, so now we've got all this big real estate for sale, and it looks like we're going to have a giant correction in home values. The bubble's been inflated. The government is trying to reinflate the bubble. Anyone with common sense knows that's not going to work. So another bust is around the horizon, and apparently Bob Chapman hadn't called in. Perhaps he's going to call in the next hour. So we're coming up on a break. We will continue with the news, and we will go on into some of the news that we had planned for the second hour in case that is what's happening. This was reported by Reuters. May 6, 2009, banks need billions more. Regulators have told Bank of America Corp. it needs $34 billion of capital to withstand a deep economic downturn. An industry source familiar with results of a government stress test said late on Tuesday. Citigroup Inc. may need as much as $10 billion more. A person familiar with the matter said this week about 10 of the 19 biggest U.S. banks being stress tested may need more capital. A person familiar with the official talks has said. The source were not authorized to speak because the stress test results have not yet been made public. Results are due out late Thursday. This was May 6th. Early results of the test may unnerve investors who have hoped they might show the industry was in less of a dire condition than feared. Bank of America's test results are also certain to increase pressure from Chief Executive Kenneth Lewis, who has ousted as chairman last week in a shareholder vote. The ouster could also lay the groundwork for his departure from the company, who has served for 40 years, including last night's CEO. Here's something I wanted to mention before we go to a break. All of the press is worrying about the $300,000 that they blew on filming Air Force One flyby Statue of Liberty, Semiramis, whatever you want to call it. While the Secretary of the Treasury and the Federal Reserve has looted us $12 trillion, the press has us focused on, what would that be? Pennies on the dollar of dropping the bucket? We're coming up on a break. We will come back and continue with more news. You are on the Real News Radio, right here on the Liberty News Radio Network, WSIC 1400, WDSL 1520.